So I'm going to say right at the outset of this episode that Amy will probably need to come back because we have been going a mile a minute on things that she knows that we don't know. Amy Toman is my guest today, and she is multi-passionate, but she's an expert. She's a Google product expert, gold level. So she helps out with Google business profile questions and problems, and she can talk more about what that means. She's also a local SEO specialist. She specializes in the legal industry, and she works with pet sitters. She worked out of a co-working space, so she gets our business. And Amy, somebody in my Facebook group recommended you to Leslie Bailey, who's in Indianapolis, who said, Jamie, if you need a Google expert, you should talk to Amy. So we're like, I don't know, 7 degrees of separation from a Facebook group contact. So thank you to the Facebook group person who connected us. And thank you for taking the time to do this, because I kind of reached out and said, hey, my audience needs to know what you know. And I'm learning as we're talking that we don't even know what we don't know to some extent. So thank you for taking the time to do this. Okay.
Google has got a lot of nuance to their listings. Their listings have become central to a lot of businesses marketing. But as you say, there's so many small little areas that can both help and hurt. So I'm glad to talk to everybody because there are rules specific to co-working spaces that Google has created,
which is fairly new.
Oh yeah, I'll make you bet that most are not aware of them.
Wait, so tell me, how did you get into being passionate about Google and SEO?
Okay, I worked at a niche business agency that created websites for pet sitters. I did that for a while. When I left there, I had made so many contacts. They asked me, can I still keep asking you questions? Can you still help me? So I started my own business, and I did that for about a year and a half. I went from one agency that kind of dealt with an SEO agency that dealt with contractors. And then I left there and I moved into one that now specializes in attorneys. I do legal SEO now. I still help my pet sitter friends also, as well as just working with general small businesses. Small meaning not they don't have 8,000 branches, multiple branches, just not as large as say a Best Buy. I also volunteer on the Google Business Forum, the Google My Business Help Forum, or I will tell you, I go back and forth between Google My Business. The new name is Google Business Profile.
I know. I'm trying to get that right, but it's so ingrained. Yeah.
It's a mouthful, but I volunteer there and I ask a lot. I answer a lot of questions. People have a lot because the Google rules are they're not cut and dry. There are some nuances to things. And so a lot of people go on there. Like I said, it's called the Google Business Profile Help Forum, and you can usually get help from a Google product expert.
Okay.
They're about, in English, I think there are about 50 of us globally.
Wow.
So, and I've helped people all over the world. I've helped people in Africa, in Europe, in Asia. I haven't hit South America yet, but Australia, Indonesia, lots of people all over. And it's just really nice to be able to do it for the community because these people would have no other way of getting help.
So. No, I'm so glad to know about that. We'll have to make that listing, and we'll link to your LinkedIn profile. You have a great bio. You're active on Twitter.
Yep, I'm Bubbles Up.
You're
literally at Bubbles Up. It's an inside joke with my husband, but I also I know with everything else I say, I also volunteer a lot at Girl Scouts, and at Girl Scouts I'm Bubbles. So there you go.
Okay, I love it. You're so like multi-passionate, but it all sort of, except for the bubbles, maybe ties together. Okay, so you've worked in a co-working space, and I would say probably 80% of co-working space leads initiate through the Google Business Profile. Co-working near me. So it's a huge lead source and it needs to be protected at all costs. So, so we could talk a little bit about that. I do want to, I think the primary topic I want to make sure we address, because we could get into a lot of topics, is protecting my listing if I have members that want to use the same address. And there's a lot of kind of like nuances that go into that. And I think those are the rules that you were referring to that you would demystify for us. So
Yes.
why don't you dive in and I'll ask clarifying questions if there's anything I feel like we need to probe more.
Okay. Co-working spaces are tough for Google, and it took them a while to come up with the rules. But I'm just going to be right up front, and I'm just going to tell you right now what they say, because I have them up here. Businesses cannot list an office at a co-working space unless, here you go, the business maintains clear signage, receives customers at the location during business hours, and is staffed during business hours by your staff. So let's break that down a little bit. Let's start with clear signage. Now, before I get into that, let me just move a little back a bit. Co-working space owners, your listing is usually, from what I've seen, a street address and possibly a floor, like say second floor would be suite 200.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You need to keep that. You need to keep the address. You need to keep the suite. You need to not let any of your members use that suite.
Okay, so they can't use the same exact address.
No.
Okay.
And that is what brings us over to the rules. But let me just tell you another thing. It's just, the problem is if you have 8 people all using suite 200, they all may end up getting their listing suspended.
Right.
So let's go back to the rules. Let's talk about this a little bit. Okay. The biggest thing to remember for owners is have your own suite number. Do not share it. If you have you have divided your space into individual offices, which is definitely the way to go. Give them set designations, ABC 202, 204, 206. That is what you want to do. Do not leave it to your members to create those.
Yep. Have a spreadsheet,
confusion,
and assign.
Yep. Someone will get suspended and someone will blame somebody else.
Yeah.
All right.
And we can make those up, because I always distinguish the post office does not want you to make up suite numbers.
You know what? I don't know their rules. I can only tell you from
but Google doesn't care.
They want to know where you are in that space.
Yep.
And as long as you can designate it and make sure that no one else has that space.
It's unique. It has to be unique.
Yeah, it has to be unique. Exactly.
Yep. Okay, wait, what about the argument? Somebody gave me this argument once. They're like, well, if I Google like a shopping mall, the Safeway and the Starbucks, or, have the same address on Google.
You're not Safeway. You're not Starbucks. Google understands those. Google can find, not only that, Google can find that information in multiple places. Okay, they can find that on Starbucks, probably on Starbucks website. They can find it in 8 other places, all linking in. So unfortunately, that's the best answer. Unless you're a multinational corporation, don't attempt it. It's just gonna bite you back.
Okay.
So we're gonna go over here. We're gonna talk about these rules. You have to have each individual office if you are going to use that address for a co-working space. Let me explain how the offices worked at the place that I went, which, like I said, I feel bad because they went down after the pandemic. Is what they had is they had individual offices, and they had what we referred to as a community desks. The individual offices had their own designations, and they had glass doors on each one. And when one client moved out and another came in, they had a really beautiful plastic sticker that went on with the business's logo on the door. So there was never a question which business was in which space, or if the space is permanently occupied by that business. Very clear. They left no hesitation whatsoever. The reason why that's important is, as I said, the rule says unless that business maintains clear signage. So what I recommend Because here's the thing, if you get suspended, you need to prove all this. And the best thing you can do is have photos on your Google listing showing this, right? So if you were in suite, I don't know, B, show a photo of the door with your logo on it. Or if you have a sign next to your door that says suite B in the name of the business, show photos of this. Okay. For the owners, not only do you want, and this is how you're helping your members, not only do you want to have something on or just next to the door, you want to have a sign by the entrance, right? Maybe one of those ones where you can slide, the names in and out, or the letters. You want to have something like that. If the building itself will allow it, you have it in the lobby as well, because people need to be able to prove that they have the signage that Google's asking for and take photos. All right.
And part of this, the driver behind this is Google wants the consumer to not be confused.
That's it.
Yeah. So their interest is, look, if somebody Googles a business and it says it's here, we want it to be easy to find and the person can show up and find the business.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And they want, and I also don't want people I hate to say this, they don't want people screwing around. They don't want people to say, I'm here, but they're really not, or they're renting a box. No, that's not where, because that's not where they are. Right. Okay. So the second thing, receives customers at the location during business hours. If somebody just walks in and like 3 days in a row and there's no one in your office, the light is off every day, they can report that. They can report that and Google will go, oh, well, and they will suspend you. So you have to show people that there is, that there is action going on there. Take photos of somebody in the office, show them with, you don't have to show like what's on the desk, but maybe just show them, this is where this person sits. This is where that person sits. And also that the place itself has to say, if you're going to say during business hours, if the co-working space is only open from 9 to 5, don't say that you are in, at your office from 8 to 6. You'd have to separate that out, and that's another story in itself. But just make sure that the co-working space hours will work with the members, or the members work with what the co-working space has. Last thing, staffed during business hours by your staff. Again, taking photos of people sitting at the desk working those photos, because Google is really good about photos right now, about their AI. They can tell you if you took a photo and that photo does not match up at all the photos of everyone else, or sorry, the other spaces within that building, they'll be able to tell. So if you take one at your home office and say, look, here's my, my co-working space office, Google will know it's not. I mean, they won't call you on it, but they will be able to tell. So, and also it's by your staff during business hours that they have to be there. That means too, is that if you have a receptionist, the receptionist does not count. So if you're getting, if you're getting mail or something like that, you need to have somebody there to come pick it up. You can't just leave everything to the receptionist, basically.
So the receptionist being the employee of the co-working space, like a community manager.
You can't say that. You can't say that they are. They can't.
They can't act on behalf. It has to be
phone calls. Phone calls have to, even though they don't say it in here. I just noticed that, but phone calls. If somebody calls you, it can't be answered by a central line. It has to be answered by the business itself.
So these rules imply that to use the address for a Google business listing, they really have to be present.
They have to be present, and they cannot be at the community desk. They can be at a community desk if they follow all the rules and they have signage that specifically designates that desk for one person only, and no one else can be seen working at that desk. I would not do it for a community desk because it's too hard to prove.
What about a dedicated desk with like a
dedicated desks? Dedicated desks will do it, but again, you have
not
to have
a flex desk, because the flex desk not provable, because really it could be used by anyone. So if the dedicated desk has the right signage.
Exactly. I will tell you a secret too that people should remember. Do many of your members put their floor plans online?
Oh, it varies, but certainly some do.
If someone is trying to find out if a business is at a co-working space or is at as a main desk or not, it's the first thing we look for. I'm just going to leave it at that.
If there's a floor plan that's publicly available. So
If
that you
they're
can
all,
check.
if I find somebody who's at suite 200
Yep.
and I find that the suites go from 202 to something,
I see. Yeah.
because I'm thinking from the mind of a spam hunter now. The spam hunter says, my person is number 4 in the listings for whatever service it is. I look at the top 3 and I say, what are they doing wrong? If they're working at a co-working space, again, Google will, if you give them enough proof, Google will act on it and suspend it and make that business prove where they're actually doing business.
Okay, got it. So I'm an attorney in New York, and I really want a San Francisco business because I work with, clients from the Bay Area. I specialize in whatever patent law. And so I want to be, I want to show up in local searches. It sounds like if I don't have a team member in a space, in a co-working space in San Francisco, then even if I have signage and the community manager will whatever take my mail, that doesn't count. I cannot actually have a listing.
Again, if you have that, if they're using a community desk, no. But if they have an actual office that has all those proof.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
put it this
someone
way,
has to use the office. They can't rent an
Yes.
office and never come.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, to be honest, if as long as they have the office, if it's within a co-working space, yes, you have to prove it. Some people have rented offices that are legit offices in like bricks and mortar and stuff,
Yep.
and that's never questioned. But it seems like co-working spaces are more
interesting.
questioned than other places.
Okay.
Also, I will point out too, if you have a business, just the example that you had where you were in New York and you want a business in San Francisco, don't ever put your service area. If you're saying that you have a service area, don't ever put it. It needs to be 2 hours from your driving time from your space or less. Don't ever put like the entire country you're in as your service area, because that's one
Google
reason
won't.
why you won't get suspended for that. But if you're suspended for something else, they will not bring you back until that's fixed, and they usually won't tell you why you were suspended.
So, in terms of enforcement, how will Google figure out? So, like the attorney example, I want an address. So I've rented a dedicated desk. No one uses it, but the co-working space put up signage for me. So I meet the signage requirement. I've taken some photos. I don't ever send anybody to that address, so maybe I won't get caught.
Somebody will report you.
Okay, so that's kind of the risk, is that there's an end user somewhere that gets annoyed with something that's happened and they're looking around to find you.
Yeah. Google's AI won't pull it out themselves.
Okay.
But somebody will report you. Somebody will. And not only if that, but if they're good, they will have photos, they will have paperwork, they will look at your LLC and say the LLC does not list that location. Why is that? And they will produce enough for Google to get you thrown off. That's called a very good spam hunter. But again, that's why one of the things that I was, I know I brought up to you at one point, is knowing these rules is, I think, something that will help your owners help their members. Okay. To be able to say to them, these offices, these 10 offices, the 5 here, the 5 there, they are Google compliant.
Yeah.
So if you're coming in there, I know you said you have to have, 6 touch points to make a sale?
Oh,
something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard that a few minutes ago. One of them could be, again, these 6 offices are Google compliant. Let me just go over the rules with you, but just so you know, these offices you can use. We know you can use them. We have set them up as such. So that's something I think would really help people, because I'm sure some businesses start out with like, I want to be here. I need a small space for myself. I'm going to use Google, maybe. But by being able to say, no, you don't have to use your home address. You can use this address. Here's just the rules. And look, I've made it easy for you by, did you notice the sign by the door? Did you notice the sign next to your office? Did you notice how we have the logo for your business on your door? You know, we have a central mail area, but you can go, grab it yourself. I have phone lines that I can add in, the whole drill. But by making them Google compliant
Yeah.
and knowing what
What that
it
means.
means.
Yeah. I love that as a marketing benefit. I think that's super smart.